Welcome back to All Things Money. My name is David Blain, and during today's show, we're mostly talking about taxes, how to play the tax game and win. Before we move on with that topic, I'd like to give you our phone number, which is 633-0107, our email, which is allthingsmoney@dlblain.com, and our website, which is www.dlblain.com. There you'll find information about myself, my firm, as well as archive copies of the show. We'd love to hear from you. We get a lot of our ideas for topics on the show from our listeners and viewers out there, so please let us know what you'd like us to talk about. Before the break, we were talking about the income tax system. You have to know the rules of the tax system if you want to win the game. We're going to go over some of those rules. We talked about how the income tax was essentially enacted in 1913, the way it is today. And right before the break, I was mentioning that there are some alternatives. We're not going to go into those too much, but I would encourage you to at least become familiar with them. There all are alternatives to the way we are taxed today. Number one is the flat tax, where essentially there would be maybe a 10% tax on all types of income, wage, dividend, interest, and you would eliminate all the deductions. And so you would not have the lobbyists have so much power in Congress. You would not have Congress and the government having so much power with tax policy, the way they manipulate the behavior of people and corporations. And so with a flat tax, it would just be a stated amount. Another alternative to that is to get rid of the income tax altogether and go to a national sales tax, where all goods and services would be taxed at a certain amount. You'd eliminate Social Security tax, income tax, all these excise taxes, things like that, and you would just go to a flat fee. Now, detractors of that say it unfairly penalizes the poor. Some of the positive things is you pick up a lot of additional revenue from all the people that A, either cheat on their income taxes but still have to buy stuff, or B, a lot of the illegal market activity such as drugs. People selling drugs generally don't file a tax return reporting their business income from that sort of endeavor, but they do go out and buy, forgive my stereotyping, Escalades and cigarette boats and things like that. Under a national sales tax type of taxation system, we would earn revenue on that. So anyway, those are some alternatives. I encourage you to check them out. Maybe we'll talk about those on a future show. But now we're talking about the current system as we have today, which is a progressive tax rate. As your income goes up, you are progressively taxed at a higher rate, but it also allows for a myriad of deductions. And the rules around these deductions and reporting of income are very complicated. So let's talk first about the IRS. Is a massive organization. It's one of the largest employers in the United States. They process somewhere around 250 million tax returns per year. In addition, they process approximately 1 billion W-2 forms which report wage earnings, as well as 1099 forms to report miscellaneous payments. That's a tremendous amount of paper. That's a lot of data that they have to keep up with on individuals, businesses, all sorts of entities. So the IRS is broken down into four main divisions. The wage and individual, which is what most people are probably familiar with. There is a whole other section on small business and self-employment. And then there's a large business division. And then there's a whole tax-exempt and government entity division. So beyond the people that look at, the average citizen's 1040, there's this huge bureaucracy out there that looks at, everything from other government entities to nonprofits and big businesses. The communication between all these entities is not always that great, and so what one division knows, the other division may not, in fact, know. There are four main rules when you're dealing with the IRS, and I'd really like you to pay attention to these and learn these. The biggest rules for dealing with the IRS, I've tried to boil it down to four things. Number one is follow the deadlines. there is no excuse for not filing something on time. Even if it's not complete and you have to amend it, or if you don't have the money to pay, if you owe, what you don't want to do is get behind on the filing. It's bad enough if you're behind and you owe tax or something, but whatever you do, don't get behind on the filings. File something. It's the number one way that triggers the IRS to come after you is if you don't even file. If you file something and maybe you don't have all, I'm certainly not advocating you file a intentionally incorrect return, but if you don't have all the information, it's better to go ahead and file something than nothing. So number one, follow all the deadlines. Number two, when you communicate with the IRS, communicate in writing. Always get it in writing, whether it's you instructing them of something or sending them information, or them. If you're speaking with someone on the telephone, they always give their name and badge number. Make sure you write that down. I always send follow-up letters. Say, hey, I spoke to Mrs. Jones, badge number XYZ. This is what we discussed. So you always want to put it in writing. If the IRS makes you an offer or requests something from you, always get it in writing. The third thing is be very specific about what the IRS either is asking for or what you're asking for. For example, if you were to get audited, and the IRS agent says, well, we're auditing everything. Give me all your records. That is not going to cut it. Do not do that. Make them be specific. They want receipts for this specific deduction, or if you're requesting things, don't say, oh, give me all my tax returns for the past 10 years. Be very specific. I want this form. I want this, date. So get it in writing and be very specific. My fourth rule of dealing with the IRS is get them to agree to something. For example, if you filed your return but they are questioning it, simply state, you would agree that I filed my return on time, wouldn't you? Get them to agree to things and get those in writing so at least you have a baseline on what you can agree on. So those are my four main rules. We're running out of time today. We'll continue this next week, but just to kind of recap, 4 main rules for dealing with the IRS. Don't miss your deadlines. File on time. If you communicate with the IRS, make sure that you do it in writing. Number 3, be specific. And number 4, get the IRS to agree to something. So we'll continue this discussion next week. For All Things Money, my name is David Blain.
The proceeding was a paid program. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of WNBU and Inner Banks Media.